My guess would be that they know these shale wells produce the most money they will ever produce, the most profit in the first, say, 4 or 5 years. So if they lock it in for, say, a 5 to 10 year contract, they're going to take out the bulk of the money up front and share in those profits. I'm guessing at this. I'm not sure because I haven't looked at any of this. But it could be that they're structuring the contracts in that way because they know that shale wells are not long-lived, and that would make sense. You just pull the monies out because that's the most you're ever going to make off these wells is going to happen certainly in the first 4 to 5 years. And then you're left with this maybe little trail of money going out at the end. And so Mexico would be left with the reserves, that's true, but the cash flow is going to be non-existent, basically. Now, I'm guessing at that. I don't know that, but that would make sense to me, and it would be a smart way. It would be a smart way to structure the contract. It wouldn't necessarily be, in my opinion, the best way for the Mexican people. I think that's what's interesting about shales is that they're expensive. The recovery efficiency is very poor. To give you an example of that, by recovery efficiency, I mean how much, when you identify a source of, let's say, natural gas, okay, in conventional fields with vertical drilling, you can typically get out about 75 to 80% of the hydrocarbon in place. With shales, we now know, based on actual well production, that they can only recover about 6.5%. That's the average. It runs between 4 and 10%,
6%? Wow.
Depending on the formation. So you can see the recovery efficiency is very, very poor. So you've got very expensive wells that aren't able to tap into. You're not going to pull out 75, 80% of the production in place, almost certainly. And so you've got a little bit of a problem. In other words, we have moved from the easy oil and gas deposits into much more difficult oil and gas deposits, much more expensive oil and gas deposits. And I think that's just the way of the future. It's a finite resource, and the end of cheap oil or gas is over. And you're going to see an acceleration in prices. My biggest concern about shales is that all this hype about there's so much of it, it's so plentiful, it's going to be cheap and abundant for decades to come. We're not seeing that. We're not seeing that in the actual production numbers. And so there's no reason to really assume that, other than just an industry executive told you that. There's no reason to assume that based on the actual numbers. And so if everybody becomes complacent, and I'm talking about globally now, if we all become complacent and just decide we don't need to do anything, then I think we could get caught in a very, very difficult position somewhere down the road because we're not making a transition away from a hydrocarbon-based energy economy to a more renewable-based energy economy. And we've got to do that. It doesn't matter. I'm not here to argue whether it needs to be done tomorrow or 50 years from now. It doesn't really matter. It just needs to be done. It's a finite resource, and we've got to move away from it. And so, do we, as a global economy, make the transition as smooth as possible and use what hydrocarbons we have left? We now know that we're into more difficult to extract hydrocarbons, and we're more dependent now upon more difficult to extract hydrocarbons. So wouldn't it make sense, isn't it more prudent to utilize those as a transition, but move on to renewables? And I think that's probably valid. We ought to be using it as a transitional form of energy. That's kind of the point I was just trying to make. But don't rely on it as your primary form of energy. I think that's foolishness to the extreme. We ought to be using it as a transition. But we need to be moving and looking at other things, and we need to be putting research monies globally into more renewable technologies and how to enhance the renewable technologies that we already have, rather than spending billions and billions of dollars on infrastructure on a technology that we know is finite and that we need to move away from. That, to me, if you want to look at where is your best investment spent, is it spent on building infrastructure to get gas out of Poland to Europe? I don't think that's necessarily the best place to put your money. I think it makes much more sense to put some money into that, but put the bulk of the monies into moving into more renewable technologies, because we've got to do it. As I stated, whether you do it now or 50 years from now, or I mean, it has to be done. You know, that goes back to those economic models, and they can put numbers in there that make it sound like they're going to create a lot of jobs. We haven't seen actually the job creation that they've promised in any shale play in the U.S. thus far, not even close to what they've promised. And another interesting thing is when you go in and you parse out those job studies in the U.S. anyway, I've only looked at the ones in the U.S., but I think this is sort of funny. They actually, you know, they state we're going to create all these jobs, and you think, great, fantastic, good engineering, good paying jobs, right? Long-term jobs. No, they haven't been long-term jobs. A lot of jobs are like truck drivers and things like that, which certainly that's a perfectly respectable job, but it doesn't necessarily last a long time. It lasts 3 or 4 years, and the pay is not that great. But they also include jobs like strippers and prostitutes in the mix, and arguably that's job creation, but it's not the job creation that you really, any of us really want to see. Those are not the sort of jobs we'd like to see created. We would like to see long-term, good-paying jobs that can support families. And so when you really get in and start digging underneath these layers of these glowing jobs reports and glowing economic reports, you find that they're not as pretty and clean as you wish they were.